How do you feel if someone abruptly walked into your life and completely destroyed it?
Can you imagine non-native species constantly entering different ecosystems, harming native species that are in it?
Their daily needs are all at stake: their habitat, their nourishment, health, and growth. This is all due to invasive species. Well, this is our biosphere.
It contains all the components located in the atmosphere and on or beneath the Earth's surface.
It starts from the producers and travels up the food chain to the primary, to the secondary, to the tertiary, and to the quaternary consumers.
All of these organisms are connected to one another. They are interdependent. However, some species could decline or become extinct due to one single change.
You can lose a few of these blocks without great damage.
Native species entering a foreign food chain could happen intentionally or unintentionally, but would certainly affect native organisms living in that region either in a positive or negative way.
Invasive species could be a threat to the existence of the inhabitants, causing a negative impact on the environment, the economy, and society.
This is due to types of symbiosis, which is a close interaction between two different species, where members of one species live in, on, or near members of another species.
A small or large factor can cause an entire ecosystem to collapse. This is clearly shown through the cascade effect, which is when a change causes a sequence event all leading up to negative consequences.
Invasive species are a threat to the environment because they consume living organisms that other species eat for survival. An example of this is the killer algae. It originally came from the Pacific and Indian Ocean. However, it invaded Morocco in 1984.
This invasive plant has been exposed to toxins, which causes the species that eat this plant to have a high concentration of chemicals, leading up to biomagnification. Eventually, there was an excessive amount of killer algae, and this resulted to an imbalance of species within the ecosystem.
Environmental factors such as the decline of species, animal migration, and environmental organizations all contribute to and cause the invasion of zebra mussels in freshwater environments. Overpopulation of zebra mussels causes a decline of plankton, which in turn causes the decline of other aquatic species. So as a result, the food web of native species is harmed because the water in it declines in quality, which in turn causes the wildlife inhabiting it to decline in quantity.
There is no sustained management of the base organism plankton, which in turn leads to the aquatic environment having less biodiversity. The cascade effect of zebra mussels results in them eating native species to almost endangerment.
Here's a bar graph showing the number of non-native species that have been found in the Great Lakes from earlier than 1849 to 2008. At first, there were 9 non-native species earlier than 1849, then 43 of it during 1850 to 1899, then 86, 173, and eventually 185. You can see that as the years have increased, the population has too. To make matters worse, at least 10% of the non-native species mentioned are invasive.
Zebra mussels force diving ducks to move out of their existing location. The more zebra mussels exist in an ecosystem, the more of the native species being negatively affected are going to have to emigrate. Zebra mussels are causing native species to adapt to a different location. They cause an imbalance of ecosystems and species and resources.
The Federation of Ontario Cottages Association has implemented the Invasive Species Act. They are preventing, early detecting, and eradicating the spread of invasive species. More specifically, the FOCA wants to conserve biodiversity by preventing activities of having and transporting invasive species.
Of course, the citizens would agree with this because they can enjoy their own activities and drink uncontaminated water. Politically associated individuals will support this to gain a good reputation. Businesses and corporations' economy is decreasing significantly because of invasive species, and so they will also support this act.
That's true. So let's say that I'm an invasive species, and this represents an ecosystem lacking a variety of species and limited resources, such as food and water. If I try to change this ecosystem, what do you think will happen? Well, for one, it would certainly affect many species. Like a fragile ecosystem, this pencil is unlikely to go back to its original state without further damaging it.
This is why we need to ensure that invasive species do not occur in the first place. However, this different piece of wood represents a different ecosystem with a vast variety of different species and natural resources. If I try to break it, it does not break in its form or its shape. This clearly explains why the higher the biodiversity in an ecosystem, the more resilient it is to change. Although there are many proposed solutions for invasive species, not all of them are effective. The best of the worst solution is to prevent them to occur in the first place. You could do this by being careful while gardening, cleaning boat and gear when traveling to different locations, and making sure that you aren't carrying a pet. This solution strongly protects biodiversity because as a new species invades into the ecosystem and alters the habitat, it becomes difficult for the native species. It is stated that 42% of threatened or endangered species are at risk due to invasive species.
Now this is a major problem because species that are at a higher risk have a higher possibility of being extinct. However, when species are prevented from being invasive, it also prevents them from harming the environment as well as species living in that area.
For instance, Asian carps are invading into United States rivers and are outcompeting native fish. They are voracious filter feeders and are very difficult to remove since they grow up to 100 pounds. They're spreading as fast as adding food coloring to water. Natural resources are so vast that no single individual or business is going to protect them. They don't have the incentive to. As humans, we should be the ones taking care of our environment and the natural resources, because in the end, aren't we the ones who are going to need them? It's like eating a bag of chips. We're not going to stop till the chips are almost done.
Prevention of invasive species will help manage and protect resources. This is because removing a non-native species from an ecosystem will be difficult. For example, draining small bodies of water and bringing in new species are solutions that will not help protect the resources that humans need, such as trees, water, and food.
Canada's main freshwater pipelines are being affected by aquatic invasive species, and this is directly impacting the environment. This can lead to threat to biodiversity and can cause a non-native disease to be spread just because of one foreign species. 24% of the threat to the Great Lakes is due to invasive species.
For instance, zebra mussels have entered the Great Lakes, but the problem is that they attach onto hard objects, such as pipelines, underwater surfaces, etc. Eventually, they begin to reproduce and cause many pipelines to be blocked. So as a result, it causes a destruction to the underwater environment of native species, and they cause harm to the company that is required to keep the pipelines clean and sufficient.
The best possible solution for invasive species is to prevent them to occur in the first place. This can only be achieved by being careful when traveling into a new location and identifying the plants that you own in your house. You could be growing an invasive plant and not even know.
Humans are unaware of the consequences of foreign species because these species can invade intentionally or unintentionally, as shown in this demonstration.
Invasive species disrupt tourism and are a health hazard for humans. For instance, releasing a disturbing odor is more significant as a large group of species. Millions of dollars are spent each year just in the prevention of invasive species.
Hi, I'm not a stranger. You're invading my personal space.
In the old country, we did not have what you call personal space.
Well, as countries advance, each species requires their own space to grow.
Humans adapt to the environment, but it does not reach the core of the situation. It's insanity when you continuously do the same act and expect a different outcome each time.
So why not just prevent invasive species in the first place?
Justin Trudeau, Canada's new Prime Minister, made a new plan to increase the protection of Canada's marine and coastal areas from 1.3% to 5% by 2017 and all the way to 10% by 2020. He is also investing the $40 million of Stephen Harper and Cup from the federal government government ocean science and monitoring programs. This will likely lead to a sustainable change for the future.
But I wonder how the government will achieve this without disrupting the environmental processes. As years go by, I wonder how Trudeau will further protect the ecosystems and its native species in Canada. But all individuals need to lend hands. Let humans establish a legacy to protect our biodiversity, our natural resources, and our home.
Sightings of invasive species should be reported at 1-800-563-7711.
Or info@invadingspecies.com.
Make a difference for the better living of others ahead. Thank you.